Did you ever feel like the hardest part of following a vegan and gluten-free diet is not the diet itself, but actually managing that diet in the presence of others? And what I mean by the presence of others is if you live in a shared household like I do with 3 other people, myself and my son, we're gluten-free, but among the 4 in my family, I'm the only one who follows a vegan diet. But what about those scenarios where you're invited to a social event, a wedding, a party, just a get-together with friends, or maybe asked to go out to dinner, both with your family, friends, or others, and you're following this diet? Tell me in the comments if you have faced any challenges in this area. A real challenge is when someone says, "Don't worry, I have it covered for you. I'll cook for you." From a vegan standpoint, that can be quite manageable. If you're celiac like I am, the generosity of others cooking for you, although done with well intentions, can be problematic because they don't know the proper protocols to take to prevent cross-contamination. And then that causes a whole other layer of social issues. So again, let me know in the comments if you face any of these challenges. And in this video, yes, this is a cooking video, so I'm going to show you how to make a quick and easy butter chicken. It's an Indian dish, butter chicken, but I'm going to veganize it and make it with tofu, crispy tofu, and also an Indian side salad called kachumber. It's a tomato and cucumber salad that accompanies the butter chicken quite nicely. But during this video, I'm going to give you some of my personal tips on how to navigate these issues. And again, this is a sharing process, so please share in the comments if you have any suggestions for those who are struggling with these issues. I'm going to start by showing you how to make the kachumber salad. You want to make this about 1 hour in advance of serving. More is even better because what you want to do is allow the flavors to blend in the refrigerator. So I'm going to start here by chopping up a large red onion. I'm going to use only half of this because it is so large. If you have a smaller onion, just use the whole thing. Like I said earlier, in my family we have 4. 2 of us have celiac disease and we must eat gluten-free. However, I'm the only one who eats vegan. But let's first address the gluten-free issue. As I discuss this, you'll see that I take the onion and then I finely dice it and put it into a large mixing bowl. I'm the main cook in our family, so everything I cook is gluten-free. On occasion, my husband will have something like a sandwich or maybe a croissant or muffin that's not gluten-free. He's careful about cleaning up crumbs and he prepares those things in an area that's separate from other areas where I prepare food. In fact, he has his own toaster oven. I have a toaster oven which has only gluten-free items in it. So my celiac diagnosis was many years ago, I think 13 or 14 years ago. And my son, who also has celiac disease, was very young. So we had a daughter who was several years older and then my husband. And at the beginning, yes, it definitely caused issues. A feeling of loss, not only for those of us who had to eat gluten-free, but for the whole family in general, because we had to change our entire method of eating. Tell me in the comments if you're going through this, and I have some suggestions and tips for you. But please offer suggestions and tips for others who may be experiencing this. So back to the recipe here. What I'm doing is I slightly microwaved a lime. I think it was like 10 seconds. It loosens up the juice inside, and then I roll it to further loosen the juice before I cut it. So I'm going to put the juice of 1 whole lime on top of the diced red onion. And then what I do is I want to massage that juice within the onion And in fact, I actually squeeze it to somewhat crush the red onion a bit, and I tear it into further smaller pieces. I then cleaned and de-seeded and diced 2 large beefsteak tomatoes. I started transitioning to more of a plant-based or vegan diet a few years ago. I had cut out dairy years ago due to intolerances, and my son's actually allergic to dairy. But anyway, about going fully plant-based now and vegan, I'm the only one in my household. And again, I said I'm the cook in my household. So that puts me in a position of making 2 versions of each meal. And so I've just had to get organized to make sure that I can make a meal that allows, well, all 100% gluten-free, but also then allows 2 versions, one that's plant-based and one that's not. So I see this topic trending in social media posts and also in the comments of other YouTube videos. And it's often the case where there's one person in a household with others. It could be a family or roommates, and one is following a certain diet and the others aren't. And particularly when that person is the cook in the house for the others. And they want to stick to a particular diet, either for health reasons or ethical reasons, like animal welfare reasons for those who are vegan. And they find themselves in the position of not only being the one who has to follow this diet or who chooses, let's say, but in the case of celiac disease, that's not a choice. But then they're cooking for others. And yeah, it is extra work. So here I'm dicing 1 English cucumber. And then I add the cucumber dices to the tomato, red onion, and lime juice. So I see in some households, those who are not following a special diet, they just prepare their own foods. And then those following the special diet prepare their own. And that's just not the way it works in my household. Like I said, I'm primarily the cook. Then I see, if in my scenario, I see comments coming from people like, you shouldn't be cooking for the others then. They should just eat what you're eating. And they should just convert to your diet. In my household, that's just not the way it's going to work. And we don't have that type of relationship. We kind of share the cooking process. I am the cook, and then the others help clean up. And it's just the way it is, and it works for us. Now I'm de-seeding and dicing a serrano pepper. This is one of the hotter peppers, so you have to just be careful in handling the pepper and the seeds, since it can get quite hot and the heat can remain on your fingers. So let me know in the comment if you're the primary cook in the house and you're following a vegan and gluten-free diet, or maybe one of them. Let me know, do you cook 2 meals? Do you cook your own meal and then the others who are not following this diet in the house prepare their own meals? How does it work in your house? And do you have any issues with regard to how it works? Let me know in the comments. I added the diced pepper to the salad mixture, and then I took a large handful of mint leaves, probably about 1/4 cupful, and I rolled those up and then I sliced them into thin slices. I wanted to cover some tips about handling your diet when you're going out of the house, like say to a restaurant, or also to a social event such as a wedding, or perhaps being invited to a barbecue at someone else's house, or maybe over for dinner at someone else's house. I then added the sliced mint to the salad. I then also diced about 1/4 cup of cilantro, and I added that to the salad as well. When going out to a restaurant, if the restaurant doesn't know me or I don't know it, I always first start my relationship with that restaurant by speaking to a manager. It usually can be the general manager, or if not, the head chef. And I may be labeled a Karen for this, but I need this for my celiac disease. And it's okay that I want to make sure that I'm not going to get sick. So if you feel that you're a pain or an inconvenience, you're not. Your health is really important. So please listen to me and always speak to the manager if the restaurant doesn't know you. I then added 1 teaspoon of cumin to the salad, and I also added 1 teaspoon of cracked black pepper, and I stirred all of the ingredients together to make sure that the spices and the lime juice were incorporated throughout all of the salad. I then also put a plastic wrap on top of the salad, and I placed it in the refrigerator to store it for, I stored it for several hours, but I recommend at least 1 hour in the refrigerator to allow the flavors to blend. So many restaurants today now know what it means to prepare safe, gluten-free food for someone with celiac disease. And they'll be upfront with you. They'll say, well, we have a risk of cross-contamination because of maybe in a pizza restaurant, flour in the air, or we don't use separate fryers. That's a big one to pay attention to, because you don't want to have something fried in a fryer when that fryer contains wheat-containing items. To make a nice crispy tofu for the buttered tofu, I suggest you use super firm tofu. And then most of these tofus have a lot of water removed, but I decided to remove even more, and I put it in my tofu press to remove additional water for about an hour. Check out the description if you want to know information about this particular tofu press. I think handling plant-based or vegan requests at restaurants are way easier than handling the gluten-free requests, since they don't have any repercussions from an allergic or food intolerance standpoint. So, I understand everyone has a different comfort level about coming in contact with non-vegan items, so you can handle that by asking the server. I don't think you need to talk to the manager, but you may if you have particular questions about sauces or how things are prepared. But I think it's much easier than handling the celiac compliance request. As you see, this tofu press removed water even from this super firm tofu. It catches it in a tray below. So I just poured that away, and then what you want to do is take the tofu block and dry it off with a paper towel or a clean kitchen towel. I then tore the tofu into large chunks, and I placed that into a large mixing bowl. So when you go to social events that involve people who you don't really know from a personal standpoint, it's similar to handling a restaurant, because you don't have that personal dynamic to navigate with them as you do with friends and family. I coated the tofu chunks with 1 tablespoon of olive oil. I mixed all of the tofu and olive oil together to make sure that the oil coated each crevice of the tofu chunks. If you don't want to use oil, just don't use it. I then added 1 tablespoon of cornstarch and 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. I then mixed the tofu with my hands to coat it with the seasoning. When friends and family invite you either to a social event or over to their house for dinner, or lunch or a brunch, things can get a bit more difficult. I think it's best just to be honest with them and tell them your situation. If you're celiac, you really can't risk being exposed to gluten. And as far as your vegan requirements, you can state your preferences, but you can offer to bring your own food or something that you can share with others as the first option. You can explain to them all the risks of if you're exposed to gluten, what could happen to you from a health standpoint. Back to the recipe, I put a piece of parchment paper on a baking tray and I spread the tofu out throughout the tray. You don't want the pieces touching because you want everything to brown nicely. The best hopes is that your friends and relatives will be understanding of your situation and then agree to allow you to maybe bring something, or the next case option is they may say, well, I'll prepare something for you. For me, this is one of the most anxiety-inducing situations because the friend or family member intends to do well, but they may not know how to prevent cross-contamination such that you'll end up getting sick. So what I did here with the tofu is I put it in a preheated 400-degree oven, and I baked it for 30 minutes, flipping it halfway through. To make the butter chicken sauce, I started with one 15-ounce can of tomato sauce, and I poured that into a saucepan over the stove. I then added one can of full-fat coconut milk. When you explain to friends and family that it's not only important to make sure that your food doesn't contain gluten, but that it's also prepared in a manner that doesn't have it come in contact with gluten, you're going to get different responses from different people. Here I'm adding 1 teaspoon of salt, and then I add 1 teaspoon of garam masala, half a teaspoon of cumin, a half a teaspoon of turmeric, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, and 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Some people will feel intimidated when you tell them all of the requirements for cooking gluten-free food, and they may feel most comfortable with you just bringing something that you feel comfortable eating, but you can share with others. Others may take on the challenge of actually learning the steps required to avoid cross-contamination, and they can have a dialogue with you about how to achieve that result. So I add the juice of 1 whole lime to the butter tofu sauce, but what you don't see me doing is adding 1 tablespoon of maple syrup to add a hint of sweetness. I stirred this all together and allowed it to simmer for about 10 minutes on medium heat to allow it to reduce and thicken a bit. So if you have a friend or family member who takes the time to actually learn what it means to cook gluten-free, and they do that for you, that is just a wonderful situation for you, and it's so kind of the person offering to do this. I took the tofu out of the oven after 30 minutes, and as you can see, the exterior is slightly crispy and brown. If friends or family tell you that, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it, and they kind of keep you in the dark and they don't want to know more about how to make gluten-free, that's when things get difficult. Here you see me adding the crispy tofu to the butter sauce, and I'm going to just allow that to simmer over the stove for a few minutes to allow the tofu to soak in these delicious flavors. I've had situations where friends cook me a meal and then I get very ill afterwards, and I find out in talking to them that steps they took to prepare the meal that gave me contact with gluten. For example, cutting something on a cutting board that's used traditionally for bread. Before eating a food, if you learn that it was prepared in a manner that will make you sick, you just have to graciously decline being able to eat it, explain why you'll get sick, and thank them profusely for going through the effort of trying to make you a safe meal. Then you're going to have the scenario where people completely deny, downplay, or trivialize your medical needs for safe gluten-free food. And then when it comes to vegan, they really can hit you with criticism. Thankfully, I haven't experienced this with friends and family. So let me know in the comments if you have received such criticism and how you handled it. Frankly, I think that these kind of comments are pretty uncaring, and I don't know. This is relationship advice. I'm not sure why that person wouldn't care for your welfare. So I enjoyed the buttered tofu with the side of rice and the kachumber salad. The buttered tofu is just pure comfort food. The sauce is buttery without dairy, and the kachumber salad has a nice coolness to complement the buttered sauce. And it also has a slight of heat from the peppers. But let me know in the comments if you try this. Also, let me know in the comments any of your advice about dealing with the difficulties of a gluten-free and vegan diet. Also, check out these next videos for some more gluten-free and vegan recipe ideas.